بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآله. So in this year's lessons, we're going to be speaking about wudu, we're going to be speaking about ghusl, and we're going to be speaking about tayammum. Now, just generally speaking, wudu is this process of spiritual purification a person does on a daily basis or semi-daily basis, depending on the gender in certain cases, okay? And it's for salah and other actions as well we're going to touch upon. Ghusl is something that is not necessarily done as often as wudu, because the reasons for ghusl do not occur as often, and we're going to be touching upon that. Tayammum is something that you do when you're unable to do both of those. So if a person is not able to do wudu, a person is not able to do ghusl, they resort back to tayammum, which you don't need water to do, and that's why it's a last resort in a sense. But from the concepts of wudu, as we've been doing, and because this is a university level course, we're going to be talking about jurisprudential concepts that you can use in other fields or other chapters of jurisprudence. So last year, we spoke about a law called qa'idat al-istishab, where we said that a person's certainty in something cannot be erased by doubt in that very same thing. In other words, if I came into this room, and I use this example a lot. If I came into this room, and I never came into this room before, and I asked myself, this table in front of me, is it tahir or najis? What's the answer that you directly give me? Tahir. Why is it tahir?
There's no proof that there's any najasa, right?
Because there's no proof that it's najasa. That's number one. Number two, the wood itself is not one of the 10 things that we spoke about. So I have yaqeen, I have certainty that this is tahir, because it's not from those things that we spoke about. And I don't have knowledge that something made this najis. So what do I consider it to be? Tahir. Okay? Similar is the case if I knew that this was purified, and I came and I purified this table. I left, the next day I come back and I doubted. I knew there was dogs in this room, for example. I knew there was kuffar in this room, for example. And I asked myself, is this tahir or najis? What do I consider it to be? Tahir. Why? Because I had certainty. I had certainty that it was tahir. I left, I came back, and then I doubted, did it become najis or not? I go back to my certainty that I had. And it works vice versa as well. If I knew it was najis, and I left, next day I come back, what do I consider it to be? Najis, because I do not have knowledge that it became tahir when I was outside the room. Okay? So this is qa'idat al-istishab. This is a rule, this is a law that we derive from the fatawa, from the rulings that we were taught last year, or we learned last year. In a very similar manner, we're going to be looking at certain laws that we will derive, or certain concepts that we will derive from the issues of wudu and ghusl and tayammum. By the way, the issues of wudu, tayammum, and ghusl are those issues that our ulama really delve into. And from what I heard from one of the brothers, the scholars, is that there's a lot of difference of opinion when it comes to the wudu, and like on these little minor things. Okay, so they differ on certain things, and they really, when it comes to bahath kharij, when the alim, when the marja is giving a lecture, they really delve into wudu. Okay, so we're just going to be touching upon the basic concepts. So one of the concepts, for example, that we're going to be touching upon is al-umur al-tawqifiyya. This word that probably nobody can read. Okay? Al-umur al-tawqifiyya, what does that mean? Umur al-tawqifiyya, generally speaking, is what the hadith gives, what the Imam alayhi salam says is the way that it's going to be done. And it cannot be done in any other fashion, even if you think in your mind you're going to reach the same goal. Tawqifi. Tawqifi comes from the word waqafa, or waqafa, to stop. At this point, we as human beings stop. Our minds have they can't cross that line in a sense. In other words, your logic, your thinking, the way you understand things means nothing here. The Imam alayhi salam is telling you things that your mind cannot understand. How to do wudu, how to do salat, why salat al-dhuhr is 4 rak'at, not 3, not 5. Your mind cannot understand these things. Your mind has stopped at that line, and the Imam alayhi salam took over. Tawqifiyya. The issues of wudu are umur tawqifiyya, where the Imam alayhi salam has given you a specific way to do something, and it has to be done in this specific fashion. If it's not done in this way, it's wrong. Okay? Another one is how we derive certain rulings from the Quranic ayat. when it comes to the issue of wudu, the Muslims differed on how they understood the Quran itself regarding this issue. And we're going to look at it inshallah next week or the week after that. How the Muslims themselves took the same exact piece of literature, the text, and differed on how they understood it. And we have the different ways of doing wudu according to the Shia as opposed to according to the Sunni madhahib groups. Okay? And we'll touch upon that next week inshallah. So again, we're taking wudu, but I want you guys to think outside the box. Take these concepts and use them somewhere else. Okay? طيب, what is wudu? Wudu, as we all should know, is a process of obtaining spiritual purity for some sort of worship that is going to be done. طيب. A lot of us think that wudu is only for salat. No, wudu is for three things. Number one, salat, طيب, we know that one. To pray. Anytime you want to pray, whether it's wajib or mustahab, you have to do wudu, except one prayer. There is one exception to this rule. Who might know the exception to this rule? Salat al-mayyit, okay? The salat where everyone prays on the dead body of that person, or one person prays on the dead body of someone that has passed away. And that, you don't have to have tahara in the sense of wudu. And even if a person is on janaba or haid or whatever it might be, they don't have to have tahara in that sense either. They don't even have to take off their shoes. They literally just stand there. And subhanAllah, it kind of goes to show you how invaluable the human truly is, that when they're praying on him, they don't even have to take off their shoes and they don't even have to be pure while praying on this individual. Kind of goes to show us how little we are in this world. طيب. 2, making up specific acts after prayer. So, in salat, let's just say you were praying and you forgot a sajda. You forgot sujood, one sajda, one prostration, bow. You forgot to do that one and you remembered after the salat, or you remembered after you passed that, the time for the sujood. So you, for example, you got up and did ruku' for the next rak'ah, and then you remembered, oh, I did not do 2 sujood, I did 1 sujood. Okay? Some of our ulama say after the salat, you make up that sujood, like qada. Just the same way that if I miss salat al-dhuhr, and the time is gone, I have to repeat salat al-dhuhr. Here I have to repeat that sajda. Okay? Similar, they say is tashahhud. If a person misses tashahhud, and they kind of pass that time where they can do tashahhud in, which we'll talk about inshallah when we get to prayer, they can repeat tashahhud after. Rather, they have to repeat tashahhud after. Okay? For those specific times, sujood and tashahhud that are going to be done after salat, wudu a person has to do wudu. Okay? And lastly, tawaf. What's tawaf? Show tawaf. So circling around the Kaaba. And that specific act of worship, although it's not salat, although it's not necessarily one of the 2 that we spoke about, person has to be on wudu. Okay? طيب. Classification of this obligation now.
Sorry, what about reading Quran?
Here, that's a question for you guys. What about reading Quran? We were always told, بس بدك تقرأ Quran توضأ. If you want to read the Quran, have wudu. Is it wajib to have wudu while you're reading the Quran? Why, Hussain?
Because you only have to be on wudu when you're touching the words.
Very good. Okay? So when you touch the words of the Quran, you have to be on wudu. Okay? Not necessarily when you actually read the Quran, you have to have wudu. Now.
Ahmed, by the same logic, you saying, when we pray for the dead man, he's invaluable because we're not wazir, right? By the same token of knowledge, could you say that someone viewing saying the Quran without wudu is kind of like disrespect towards the language in the Quran?
Not necessarily is it disrespectful, because the person looking at you reading the Quran, whether they know you're on wudu or not, they're not going to consider you as disrespecting the Quran. Now, if you do a specific action where anybody that looks at you says, well, he's disrespecting the Quran, as in throwing the Quran, that's what we call disrespect. Like, if you want to talk about what's best or what's better, absolutely have wudu. Absolutely have wudu. But for me to say that it's wajib to have wudu when you're reading the Quran, no. And nobody would consider it to be disrespectful. They say it's just better. Okay, we go by public consideration, arf al-aam. What's considered to be disrespectful and what's not considered to be disrespectful. We'll talk about that inshallah. Mustahab. Yes, absolutely. And we're going to get to a hadith at the end that says it's mustahab to be on tahara, wudu, all the time. Okay, and there's actually a beautiful ending to that hadith, and we'll look into it. طيب. Classification of this obligation. Okay? Big words, but what does it actually mean? So our obligations are classified into two. They're classified in many different ways, but in this classification, we're going to classify them into two. We have wajib li nafsih, wajib, and wajib li ghayrih. Okay? What's wajib li nafsihi mean? We translated it here as an independent, freestanding obligation. Okay? So it's an obligation that in itself, it holds that benefit that you have to do it. Its obligation is not dependent on something else. It's freestanding. Like what? Like what? Like salat. Salat, it's in itself, the obligation of salat is not dependent on anything else. In other words, you can't give me a time where salat loses that status of obligatory. It's always going to be obligatory. And you're going to understand this when I give you the opposite. Wajibun li ghayrih. This obligation is dependent on something else. It's an introduction to something else. So in itself, it's not wajib. In itself, it's not obligatory. When I put something else beside it, that's what makes it obligatory. Like wudu. Wudu is an introduction towards salat. And that's why it's an obligation. If we were in some way, shape, or form to think of a situation where salat is not wajib, wudu would not be wajib. So it's not freestanding. It's not an obligation that is freestanding and not dependent on anything else. That's why we say wajib li ghayri. It's dependent on something else. And then wajib li nafsih, in itself. Okay? And we said wudu is wajibun li ghayri. So wudu is a reliant obligation. It relies on something else because it's only mandatory for the purpose of prayer. If we were to find a theoretical situation where one does not need to pray, and there are situations like that, where a person does not actually have to pray, okay, then wudu would not be mandatory. Like, understanding that wudu is a purification process, we ask, what are we purifying from? So in the beginning, when we spoke about tahara, we said, or like when we actually wash things or whatever, okay, the actual tahara itself, we said that tahara is a solution to a problem, okay? And anytime you have a solution, you want to understand the problem first so you can suit the solution to that problem, right? Like, we ask the same question here. If wudu is purification, what are we purifying from? Wudu is the solution. What's the problem, in a sense? Okay? So what's the thing that we're trying to purify from? So we asked the question. We said, we know that tahara, or we know that, wudu and ghusl and tayammum. Is it going on? Okay. So we said that wudu and ghusl, tayammum, okay, these different methods of purification, spiritual purification, okay, they're solutions to a problem. So we ask ourselves, what is it that I'm purifying myself from? What's this thing that I'm trying to run away from, in a sense, okay? So when it comes to the issue of, when it comes to what we purify ourselves from, it's two types of things, okay? There's two types of problems, in a sense, okay? We have al-hadath, and then we have al-khabath, okay? Al-khabath is translated into filth, okay? So it's these 10 things that we spoke about in the beginning. The blood, the urine, the feces, the dog, the pig. These are khabath, the filth, okay? That's what they're directly translated into. And that's why we said the najasa has a physical side, has a physical aspect of dirtiness, in a sense. That's why it's called the filth. Okay? It also has a spiritual side of filth, but usually human beings, when they look at blood, they kind of perceive the physical aspect of dirtiness first. Okay? So that's why we called it filth. Like, the second type is an occurrence, an event, an action that happened that takes away our tahara. And because that action happened, we have to regain our tahara. We have to regain our wudu, our ghusl. Okay? Anytime we say tahara here, guys, in this chapter, we're talking about tahara, the spiritual tahara. Okay, I don't want to just keep saying spiritual tahara. Anytime I say tahara, we're talking about spiritual only. Okay? So the second one is a spiritual impurity brought about by doing certain things, an occurrence. طيب? So the occurrence, al-hadath. All occurrences are purified through a spiritual purification, depending on the type of occurrence, depending on the type of action. And we split them into big or small. Okay? Al-hadath al-akbar wal-hadath al-asghar. طيب? Al-hadath al-akbar, we need ghusl. Okay? The wudu does not cut it. We need something big because it's a big action in a sense. Okay? We need a bigger type of purification process. And that's where we talk about ghusl, and we'll talk about that inshallah. And it comes from 4 things. Again, we'll talk about that. Number 2, the smaller occurrences, and that's the one where you only need wudu. Okay? That's the one that you only need wudu. So what are these occurrences? Technically, when you go into the book of fiqh, there's about 7 of them. Okay? There's about 7 of them. We're going to put them in 4. Why? Because the other 3 are things that bring about, the other 3 are things that are bigger occurrences. So they actually have to do ghusl, right? But anytime ghusl becomes wajib, your wudu is gone. Okay? Your wudu is gone. So let's just say something happened and I have to do ghusl now, and I had wudu before that action. My wudu is technically gone. The way I bring it back is not by doing wudu, it's by doing ghusl. Okay? So they put them all under the same category, but the ones that break your wudu only are 4 here. Okay? Urine, defecation. Don't ask me what defecation is, we all should know that. Okay? 2, passing wind. Okay? 3, sleeping that overtakes your hearing. Okay? So not just sleeping, not closing your eyes and kind of dozing off. No, sleeping that overtakes a person's hearing. Pretty much, yeah. Okay, because technically your ears are your last connection with the world in a sense. Okay? Very good. 4, anything that takes away consciousness. Here, we're not necessarily talking about fainting. Okay? We're talking about anything that takes away your consciousness, whether you're, let me call it, awake or asleep in a sense. So, getting drunk, getting high, this will break the wudu. Okay? Going, masalan, if somebody has an operation, okay, and they're sedated. The 2 types of sedation, whether it's sedation where they fall fully asleep, or they're kind of, in no man's land in a sense. They're on cloud 9, yeah. Okay, these ones will break the wudu. Now, it's as if, it's a very good question. It came in the riwayah. The riwayah told us that sleep needs spiritual purification. Now, in what sense or why? You can think of it in this sense, that when a person sleeps, it's as if their connection with God, their intellectual connection in a sense with God, is disconnected, which is kind of weird to say. But you're not conscious anymore, so it's as if the remembrance of God is disconnected at that point in time. Okay? It's a very good question. No.
Then, don't they say,
نومكم فيه عبادة. That's true, right? Whenever it's said in no, whenever it's said that sleeping is something bad, no, بالعكس, I mean, we all have to sleep. The Prophet had to sleep as well. In Shahr Ramadan, it's an exceptional case. Okay? No. In the sense that your sleep in Shahr Ramadan, you keep a connection. Okay? But that does not mean that you keep your wudu as well. Okay? Now.
I think that means they can know my God. Because when you're sleeping, there's no way you can do that. So
that could be an understanding, but no, when it says النومكم فيه عبادة, the action of sleeping in itself is worship. Okay? So Shahr Ramadan, subhanAllah, Shahr Ramadan has a lot of exceptions. That's probably one of the exceptions. But that exception does not change the ruling in fiqh. Okay? So it doesn't get to that point where it changes the ruling. Very good question. Okay? Now. You kind of doze off, right? Yeah, I know what you mean. No. You're still conscious.
Because you literally don't know, you just play.
You doze off, right? You doze off.
Not necessarily doze off. If you just, like, for example, I'm talking to you and I just freeze.
So we call that al-bahat. Okay? And they say that does not break the wudu. Okay? You're in a state of shock. That's what it is. Okay? It's a kind of mini state of shock. Unless something is happening to you that we don't know how to do, you gotta get checked out, bro. Okay? So it's a bit different. Okay? But it's a good question. So here's a common question. We're gonna end off the session. We're close to ending off the session. Does bleeding from a cut cause the wudu to break? That's a question for you guys. You think yes?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Depending on how much you
blood.
Okay, see, this is why I said common question. Okay, because there's a difference. Everyone thinks something different. Now, what do you think? I thought you had your hand up. Anyone? The answer is still no. Okay. Anyone in the back have anything? Okay. So let's take a vote. Okay, Muhammad, if you're alone, that's going to be embarrassing. Okay, if you think that it breaks your wudu, raise your hand. Okay, good. If you think it doesn't break your wudu, raise your hand. Very good. Okay, so it doesn't break your wudu. Very good. It's okay. It doesn't break your wudu. Tayyib, why doesn't it break your wudu? Because it's not one of the ones that we listed quite, very easily. It's not one of those that we listed. Now, but as funny as that might be, it's actually much deeper than that, because we said umur tawqifiyya, right? We said at the beginning that what the Imam alayhi salam gave is what the answer is. Okay? So technically speaking, because yes, absolutely, that's the reason. Because they're not one of those that are listed. Whether we understand it or not, whether we see it as scientific or not, in our minds, in our limited minds, it doesn't matter. Umur tawqifiyya. We stop and the Imam alayhi salam takes over. Okay? Very good. No bleeding does not cause the wudu to break. However, the parts of wudu need to be pure while performing wudu. Now I have a question that's going to add on to this. Certain parts need to be pure before the wudu, and other parts don't need to be pure before beginning the wudu. Which ones? So, I have in the wudu, we probably all have done wudu at least once. We know how to do wudu. There are parts in wudu that have to be tahir, they have to be pure before beginning. And there are parts that don't necessarily have to be pure before beginning the wudu. Take the stuff that you learned from last year and apply it now. Take the things that we learned last year and apply them here. Which parts can be najis before beginning and which parts cannot be? Think outside the box.
Wait, Ahmad, for the previous question, I feel like you didn't do enough justification for like why blood is tahir if it's on you. I didn't really get it, you know?
We said if you have a cut,
Yeah.
okay, and you bled from that cut,
Yeah.
does that mean your wudu is gone?
But then we say like warm-blooded animals, like vertebrates.
Good question. Very good. The blood is najis. The blood, you have to wash it off your hand. Okay? But does it break your wudu? We said filth is of two types, remember? We said al-khabath wal-hadath. Is it from the hadath? No. It's khabath, yes, but it's not hadath. Okay, so it's not an occurrence that breaks the wudu or takes away tahara. But absolutely, it's a najasa, it's something dirty, it's something impure that you have to wash off your hands.
So the hadath is what breaks the wudu. But
Yes.
the filth is what we gotta get rid of, and it doesn't break the wudu.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay? Very good. Now,
I'm just gonna guess. I think it's everything that is like touched while you're doing wudu has to be tahir, but everything else doesn't need to.
okay. I'm talking about the parts themselves. So here are the parts. Your face, your arms, your head, and your feet. Which ones of those can be najis before? Which ones of those you're not allowed to have them impure before? No.
I think your hands can be impure.
Okay, so your arms, yani?
Yeah.
Okay.
And your face.
Why?
Because those you're washing more than once.
Good. So those parts you're washing. Remember before, what did we say? How do you get najasa off? How do you purify yourself from a najasa? You wash it. If we can theoretically think of a situation where the person washing themselves in wudu is purifying themselves with that same washing, then that's okay. Very good. No problem. But we said the parts that you wipe, if you wipe a najasa, there's najasa on your head and you just wipe it. What did you just do? You just spread it. Right? Very good. Very good. You just spread it. You didn't do anything for yourself. You made it worse. Okay? So technically speaking, those parts, they cannot be najis before. While these parts have to be or can be najis before technically. Okay? Now there's ways around it and stuff. Just take it as is. Now.
I'm gonna explain. Don't just say.
No?
I make a thought.
Okay?
Because when you're washing, there's several times you have to wash.
Absolutely.
You do it once before your arm.
Yes.
You just do it once. Not necessarily.
Yeah. That's why I
So
said,
making it tahir is one thing, and then you don't have to have a tahir is one.
sure. That's why I said that we can think of a theoretical situation where you will be making it tahir and doing wudu as well. And that is if you, and Ali made a good point, that's if you wash it multiple times or wash it under kur water. Remember we spoke about kur water, where we said kur water, if you wash something with kur water, the water that comes down is not najis. Okay, and for those that are new, I'll explain that inshallah later. Okay, so if you're doing it in kur water or you're washing it multiple times, then it will work out for you. Thank you, Ali. Okay. So here's the beautiful narration from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for his love sallallahu alaihi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. عن النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, he said أكثر من الطهور يزيد الله في عمرك وإن استطعت أن تكون بالليل والنهار على طهارة فافعل فإنك تكون إذا مت على طهارة شهيدا. What is he saying? He says, regularly purify yourself. Regularly purify yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will prolong your life. That's one athar. That's one merit. That's one effect from wudu, number one. Number two, he says if you're able to stay on wudu at night and also in the daytime, then do so. Why? Because if you die and you're in a state of wudu, you die as a shaheed, a martyr. And we all know the level of a shaheed. Okay? So wudu is extremely important. Yes, sometimes we can't keep it, no problem. But before we leave in the morning, mashallah, let's do wudu. Let's walk into our classes on wudu, on tahara. It becomes a barakah, inshallah, for us. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.